everyone. We are back with a brand new episode of DSA's Life by Design. I'm your co-host, Arthur Kade, joined by my other co-host, Natalie Papier. And we have a wonderful designer joining us on today's episode. Her name is Nina Lichtenstein. Fantastic story. We can't wait to dig into it, Nina. Before we get going, Natalie, I'll let you say a quick hello because I know you guys were looking forward to meeting.
Yes.
I'm so excited to meet you. I feel like we've corresponded over email a few times, and it's really great to meet you.
Yes, same here. I'm so excited to meet you finally.
So Nina, where we usually begin is with a pretty simple question, and it's right at the beginning. Where did this start for you? When did you fall in love with design and decide that this was going to become your life's passion?
Well, there's really two answers to that question, I guess. One is when I fell in love with it unconsciously, and one is when I fell in love with it consciously. And to begin, I have always had design as part of my life. When I was 12, my father introduced me to ballroom dancing, and I actually ended up choreographing the first dances for wedding couples. And then when I was 17, I found out about Argentine tango, and that is really a dance of design. And by that, I mean individual design, because there's so many different combinations of movements and embellishments, and no two dancers dance alike. So it's a very, very creative dance. And I ended up teaching and performing that for a long time. And when I was in high school, I actually traveled to Nicaragua 3 times to do volunteer work, building houses in schools and community centers. And I just love that. I was there mixing the cement, putting on the cinder blocks, all the way till the project was done. And I did some of that in Maine too, where I was replacing a roof on a house. And when I was in Argentine tango, a lady asked me to model an Argentine tango dress. And then I kind of accidentally fell into fashion design. And I was doing that with my identical twin sister, which was really fun because growing up, we'd never really taken advantage of being twins. We didn't really like to trick people, but the producers of these shoots liked that we were twins, obviously. And so they did a lot of things where it made us look like we were the one person rotating out quickly, or put 2 different looks on us at the same time to show 2 different styles. And then from fashion design, I ended up meeting my husband and we got married. And I had always traveled the world a lot, starting when I was young, actually. And I had a great love for architecture and design and furniture. So I was always taking a lot of pictures everywhere I went. And I continued traveling with my husband after I met him, and we'd go several places a year. And he ended up proposing to me in front of the Taj Mahal, because that's, an eternal symbol of love in India. And I used the tile inlay colors of the Taj Mahal to design my wedding. So it was at this point, looking back, that I should have been like, hello, Nina, you're a designer, because I combined my love for fashion design and architecture in the design of my wedding, most particularly with my bridal party, because each of the bridesmaids took one color from that tile inlay, and then I had them have matching hair pieces, jewelry, and nail polish, and the guys' ties, socks, and watches matched them. And so it was a very colorful wedding and a lot of fun. Actually, Natalie, you would love all the colors in it. And so then after my wedding, I decided to go back to graduate school to become a Montessori teacher. And the reason I picked the Montessori method, number one, I was familiar with it. I had lived in Italy for a long time, but I wanted to pick a curriculum that you could design to the child based on their interests and passion. I didn't want a structured state curriculum. So you can see even there my love for design. But then I would say consciously it developed when I bought my house in Westchester, and there was immediately some urgent renovations we had to do. So I replaced the roof on the house. I ripped up wall-to-wall carpeting on 2 floors and replaced the flooring there. And I had an acre of brush surrounding my house that was way, way taller than me. And I got tired of waiting around at the time for the contractor that I had to do it, because he was so busy. He was a firefighter. So I took a pair of clippers and a pickaxe, and I cleared it all myself. And my neighbors like to joke to this day that they saw me out there with a machete and 2 babies strapped to my chest. But really, I had 2 baby monitors because I worked during nap time, and I was not using machete, although that would have been much more helpful to me. And then, so after doing that and also remodeling 2 bathrooms, and it was funny because my husband is a designer, so my inclination was to lean heavily on him at first for design input, but his career kept him so busy that I thought, well, if I'm ever going to finish these bathrooms, I better just pick everything out myself. And they ended up being amazing. And so then from there, I ended up meeting my new contractor. He's a close friend of ours. And the day I walked into his house, I will never forget it. I had never in my life seen such good taste in design and modern farmhouse style like that. And I just remember being so inspired. I couldn't get it out of my mind. But I was still in the midst of creating my own family. So a couple of years passed, and then I decided it's time for the renovation I've been putting off, because this is a big one, and it was gutting my kitchen. And so I started with that, and suddenly all the ideas were flooding through my head, and it wasn't just my kitchen in the end. It was my dining room, my living room, the exterior of the house. And, you know, it just never stopped, and it's still ongoing, actually.
It is so easy to like feel your passion. It's so big in your personality. What do you feel most passionate about in interior design itself?
I would say that I love to do designs that carry your eye around the room. So there's no static display, so to speak. It's almost like a cascade effect of interest and beauty. So first you're looking at the one item directly in front of you, and then your eye is carried to the next thing, and then the next thing all the way out the window through to the outside design and beyond to the landscape. And I guess you could kind of call it a symphony of sights. I like to incorporate nature in all of my designs, both in the materials and the decor and the furniture. And I really tried to do that in many ways in my house. So I like to use wood and stone. I designed my deck to be a wraparound deck that wraps from the back of the house all the way around the sunroom to the front, so that you can kind of pull the sunset in through that window when it's setting outside. It's just a gorgeous view. And you can also exit the deck from both sides. So you kind of feel like if you open the doors, you're like in nature, but you're inside. And then I also, in the design of my playroom, this is one of my favorite things. I designed some bookshelf trees, and I positioned them near the sliding glass door and the window, so that when you're in the room, you almost feel like you're in the woods outside of the room. And again, it's like the concept of pulling nature inside. So those are probably, you know, the main ways that I'm passionate about design, is the indoor outdoor feeling, nature, and the, you know, cascade effect.
You'd mentioned living in Europe, and we just had Benny Frohwein on, who's the CEO of Schumacher in Europe and the Middle East. And he had an extensively amazing answer about how growing up in Europe really helped shape his aesthetic around design and his love of design. How did living in Europe for you help shape your love of aesthetic and the way you see the world?
Well, I really think that living in Europe, and especially traveling around the world, did have a great impact on me, most notably in seeing the wonders of the world, because there's another design philosophy I go by, that nothing is impossible, and many wonders of the world defy logic, and yet they're possible. And then in my travels, I also saw so many varieties of architecture and different ways to construct houses and buildings. So, for example, when I was in Bolivia, I saw houses that were built to float on straw rafts. I saw houses in Thailand that were built on stilts. There were hotels in Jordan that were constructed entirely of stone, and they almost felt cave-like. And I explored underground cities in Turkey. I saw so many temples and mosques and colosseums. I mean, the list really goes on. So I would say probably I draw from that in terms of all of the natural materials that I saw in the buildings, and I incorporate that in my own design. And just, again, the philosophy that nothing's impossible. If I want to do a certain design or a concept, we just figure it out.
I love that. Do you feel like just having that opinion is part of what makes you a really good designer? What do you think is a quality that makes a really good designer?
I think there's a bunch of qualities, but number one on the list for sure is passion. My motto is eat, sleep, design, repeat. And I really, truly live, breathe, and dream design. And I would think that passion inevitably leads to skill, because when you're passionate about something, you just want to keep improving on yourself and learning more. And I would also say creativity obviously is something that you need, and you have to be able to like challenges and enjoy them too, because if something, for example, needs to be tweaked because of budget or maybe architecture, something might be impossible. Like, for example, there's false roof layers, so you can't add a skylight there because it would create this humongous tunnel. So you have to figure out a different way to incorporate that natural light. You have to view challenges as fun. So I was never disappointed when I couldn't do something. I was like, almost kind of like, yes, well, let me figure out something even more awesome. And so I would say another thing is you have to be able to visualize the end product, but you also have to be flexible and kind of adjust your vision as you go along, not changing it, but tweaking it here or there. And you have to have a team mentality, not an I mentality, because when you gather together the brains and talent of great designers and contractors and carpenters, the outcome is going to be phenomenal no matter what, because you're combining all of the ideas and taking them and rendering them to absolute perfection, given the talent that you have on your team. And I would also add to that list that, you know, it's good to be aware of trends, but you don't necessarily have to copy trends, because in the end, you have to be you. You have to do what you like or your client likes. And another thing you should have probably is patience, especially after the pandemic, when there were so many delays and you have to like wait for things. And sometimes actually you had to change your design based on the materials that were available. In my case, I got really lucky because whenever we did that, it was just even better. You know, what was available turned out to be a better wood than what we ended up, you know, not being able to find or whatnot. So those are, I guess, some of the top things I think a designer should have.
In listening to your story, Nina, it was incredible to essentially almost like a roadmap. You were making all these pivots professionally, going from one thing to another. And as someone who had switched careers and gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, I remember that feeling when that itch starts coming about and you're like, I'm ready to do something else. For you, as you were making these different pivots, how would you describe that feeling that would occur that would make you want to switch either to a different career, to a different place of living? How does that kind of present itself emotionally for you?
I would say that it just reached a certain point where a major factor made the decision for me. For example, if I thought that I wasn't earning enough money at what I was doing, then it was time to move on. Or if I wanted to step up on the level of professionalism in my career, because I come from an extremely educated family, I thought, well, now it's time to go back and get a graduate degree. Or, you know, we decided to have kids, and living in Manhattan was not really a choice, because once you have 2 kids and you're still in a 1-bedroom apartment, it's not really ideal. So I would say, you know, emotionally, I always loved dance and modeling. But, you know, at a certain point you think, well, let's explore what else is out there. And I don't regret any of my journey. Everything I did was so wonderful and led me to where I am now.
I like that you brought up the topic of education. This is something in interior design that I feel people are very passionate about, whether they have been professionally educated in it or certified to some degree or self-taught. I know that you attended the New York Institute of Art and Design, and do you feel like that's been incredibly influential for you to have that education?
I do feel like that was really important because I learned a lot of things there that were necessary to improve my skills. Like I learned how to draw floor plans to scale. I learned how to make presentations to clients. I learned how to do furniture layouts. I learned a lot about the history of the various design styles and furnitures. And I even, received documentation that would be helpful if you were earning your own business, if you were running your own business or owning your own business. And so I think it was a very, very valuable step. And in fact, it was so fun and rewarding. And the feedback from the designers looking at my projects was so great that I managed to complete the course in record time.
I love that. I love overachievers. Where does the process begin for you, Nina? So you meet Person X, they're like, Nina, we want to hire you. You're our designer. What happens then? How do you approach it?
I would say that the process begins with actually a statement I learned as a teacher in a CPR course, surveying the scene. So I kind of go into the house and I'm kind of like a doctor house, and I take a look around and give like a thorough diagnosis to the house or the business to decide, is it functioning fully and most healthy for the clients living there? And if not, what can I do to improve it? So is, for example, the room too dark? Is it too small? Does it lack function? Are there kids involved? What does the client like to do? Is this environment allowing them to do it? And then I start thinking about ways to incorporate everything functionally and aesthetically according to what the client needs and wants and according to what I think would look good. And some ideas occur to me instantly, and then others, depending on the size of the project, kind of evolve over time.
You talk a lot about these different avenues in life that have brought you to this place now. Do you have any role models that you can credit as your inspiration?
Yes. I actually come from a family of artists, and I married into a family of artists as well. And my husband is a designer. He has been involved in the design of many different things. Actually, he was doing graphics, and then he was doing kids' backpacks, and he was designing jewelry. So he actually also designed my engagement ring and our wedding rings. And he did my business card and my business logo. And now he's the design director of hardware for Michael Kors. But he's always been a great inspiration. And for example, in terms of the business card, he just put so much thought into the things that I said that I wanted, that when I actually went to the store to have them printed, and this is a store that does this, for a living, they were so blown away that the second I walked in, they said, "We love your business card." Who did this? And I do have to chuckle because he really does use things in his environment for inspiration. And at one point it was actually me. So he was working on a handbag design, and he did a profile of my face, and he submitted it to be made, and they loved it, but they said, "This is too specific for our customers, so we can't like mass produce this." But I actually have the bag here to show you guys. This is what it looks like.
That's amazing.
So he really used shapes to, do a very interesting rendering. But apart from him, I would say that my home design mentor is definitely my contractor friend. His name is also David. So there's always some confusion here between all the Davids, Chris's, and Anthony's on our team. But he was amazing because not only did his house and his eye for design inspire me from the very beginning, but he was always so open to all of my ideas, and I would literally flood him with them. And, but not only was he open to them, he was always so excited to carry them out. And he, I guess, really early on started to recognize that I had an eye for design. And he turned to my husband and say, you know, she has an eye for design. And so conferring with him and working with his team and rendering all my ideas was really amazing. And there's so many ways that he built up my confidence and my eye for design that he has no idea that he did, you know, just in the patience and listening to all my questions and answering them and teaching me so many things. You know, I'm so grateful.
Building a business from the ground up can be brutal. And there are so many obstacles, whether it's trying to get clients, figuring out how to run a business. I mean, there's so many questions that you have to get answered. What were some of your biggest obstacles?
I am lucky to say that I haven't had too many great obstacles, but I would say owning a business would be seen, as you were just saying, by many as very intimidating and possibly scary. And there's a lot to learn, but I actually view it as a great adventure. And I've been taking everything in stride and learning as I go and teaching myself. And I like to have a feeling of control. So I like to be involved in all of it and to know how to run every aspect of it. So if I were to hire someone someday to take over part of it and then suddenly they quit, I would still know how to do it. You know, I find that to be very important.
I mean, from being a professional model and mother of four and trying all these new fields, and not just trying them, but like actually being very successful. What do you consider some of your biggest successes?
I would say that transforming my house in a way that leaves an impression on people, where they literally tell me that they can't stop thinking about after they've left, is definitely one of my biggest achievements, because that is the feeling that I had when I left my contractor friend's house. And I never in that day leaving would have imagined I would be giving that feeling to anyone else. And then I would say my other great successes were completing the course and getting my RIDQC credential and opening my business, all three of those in just a matter of months. So I'll never, ever know how I did that. And lastly, being part of this amazing opportunity in this interview for Life by Design. That's definitely a great achievement.
Had to list that one. You're not getting away without listing that one. I want to talk to you about the DSA, because everything that DSA stands for and is doing for designers such as you and Natalie is fantastic. Absolutely. So for you, Nina, what does it mean to be associated with that organization? What do you see as the benefits and the relationship that you get to have with it?
DSA is so amazing because they literally exist to advance the careers and educational opportunities of interior designers. And they really go out of their way to do that. They offer educational courses at discounted prices, and they promote designers by putting them on their website so that clients can, you know, navigate there and look through the designers and pick one to work with. And they, you know, send out invitations to various events, and they include you in amazing opportunities like this interview. And they're just always there to answer any question or concern you might have, because they genuinely care. And not only are they willing to answer question, but they'll consult their entire team so that they feel like they're giving you the absolute best answer based on years and years of experience from amazing designers. And I think that is, you know, an amazing resource to have. And they create these networking opportunities and you get to meet new people. And that's actually how I first discovered Natalie, because I went on the DSA website and I'm like, wow, who is Natalie? And I looked into her, and then I ended up asking, you know, DSA about Natalie because I had some questions of my own.
I think it's so cool. I love the serendipitous of these connections, especially with the DSA. But even with this field that we're in, is very supportive of new and incoming designers, especially with a different viewpoint and something to say that's different and unique and not just following all the trends. how else do you feel like as an emerging designer, are you getting your name out there? Have you utilized social media to that benefit?
I do definitely agree with you that the design world is so supportive and nurturing. I mean, that's one of the amazing things about it that I discovered right off the bat. But in terms of social media, yes, I'm trying to get my name out there now on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so far, I'm actually having a lot of fun with it because I'm picking photos and finding the perfect music lyrics to put over them for my stories. And I just love that. But at some point, down the line, maybe I'd have a social media manager. We'll just I do have people I've consulted just in case I go that route at some point. But for the moment, I do, as I was saying before, think it's so important to know how to do every aspect of your business yourself, at least starting out, so you know how to connect with your clients and your audience. And that is another thing that's important to me, is I want to feel a connection with them. So when I'm putting content out there, I feel like it's reflective of my personality and they get to know me that way. And then I kind of get feedback based on their interactions about, what they like.
What's been your biggest learning so far as you've been building your business?
I would say my biggest learning is just getting to know different contractors, architects, clients, but also I think that the design mentality, there's an interesting connection for me with that, with speaking foreign languages, actually, because my bachelor's degree is in 3 foreign languages and literatures. And that was another reason why I like to travel and live around the world, was to practice those languages. But the one thing I found really fascinating about foreign languages is that once you know how to speak them fluently and you understand how the sentence structure, the vocabulary, and the dialects really communicates a mentality and a way of thought that you would never be aware of if you didn't speak that language. I find that I have a similar thing now with design. So when you find a team and you all speak that design language and you know how each other thinks, then you can really render design ideas so perfectly, because you're all communicating, fluidly and bouncing ideas back and forth off each other until at the very end of this communication process, you come up with an amazing outcome.
I am in awe of you. Not only now I'm learning that you speak all these languages too. It's just like amazing. I love it so much. And I personally always talk about how influential like nostalgia is in my life and my own journey and, my own adventures and things that happen to me. And then you start to talk to other clients and about what their story is and how to bring that into their home. Do you feel like all of your travels around Europe and your experiences can lend you this extra leg up with helping your clients define their own style?
I do, because I have so much experience with seeing other design styles and also with interacting with a lot of different cultures. And my language skills do allow me to connect with, people I work with. While they speak English, a lot of them also speak Spanish. So I get to laugh when I understand their jokes. But it does allow me just to feel like I have this vast connection to so many different personalities, because I've met so many over my lifetime, including, by the way, Arthur, some celebrities.
I believe it. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years with your business, with everything you're building?
I see it growing and expanding everywhere, kind of like a good restaurant that, where repeat customers keep coming back with their family and their friends, or maybe like your kid's favorite dentist or doctor, where their businesses are thriving because they're keeping their patients healthy and happy. So I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, communicating my love to design, putting my work out there, growing my connections with all these top-notch industry professionals and seeing where it leads me.
I think you're well on your way.
Thank you, Natalie.
It's amazing. And I'm fascinated by your journey and what brought you here. But more importantly, I can see how reflective your journey is in your work and how passionate you are. And what that brings to the table is something you can't learn that from in education. That's within you.
Yes. No, I agree with that.
How did modeling prepare you for design? Were there intricacies in what you did as a model that you were able to essentially transport and import into what you do as a designer?
Yes. So I would say that being the object of design, so to speak, that you get, an understanding of other people's design styles. You kind of see them through their eyes, and that's, very enlightening. And it was also interesting, to render ideas as a team. So again, you're working with a team, and I love the way that they incorporated color. They would often, match the clothing that I was wearing to the background and the scenery in very eye-catching ways. And they would also dress me in so many different styles that showed me in the end that every style has its merits and all of them can look good, no matter what you're wearing, things that I might have not typically picked out for myself. And, here I am wearing them.
Do you feel like that lends your own design style to a specific style in and of itself, or would you say that it's more eclectic based on this combination of styles?
I would definitely say my style for my own house is modern farmhouse style, but in terms of also incorporating some of what I learned in modeling, I would say that the way that they matched clothing to scenery is almost like the way an interior designer would match decor or furniture to the interior design of the room.
You'd mentioned your husband works for Michael Kors, and obviously that is more of, I would call, the corporate environment. You're working for somebody, you're an employee versus, in your case, you're an employer. Do you ever look at the dynamics between the two worlds and see what your husband does versus what you do? And are there advantages or disadvantages that you see in both ends of the spectrum?
Yes, I know that we both love our jobs because we both love design, but there's definitely something to be said for, having your own schedule, although sometimes his schedule can be a little more flexible. But I definitely love being my own boss, so to speak. And actually, I've loved being my own client in the design of my house. But I would say there's benefits and challenges to both. Obviously, the one, you're responsible for your own business and for the success of it. And as we spoke of before, sometimes that can feel a little overwhelming. But then on the other hand, with him, he's like in a higher position at Michael Kors, so he has a lot of responsibility and he has to live up to what they want. But I guess no matter what way you look at it, you have to want to excel and portray excellence in whatever you're doing.
It's definitely been my biggest challenge to try to do all the roles of being a small business, being just like your own marketer and website designer and deal with the accounting and all the things I don't feel like I'm necessarily great at.
Agreed.
That takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of time to figure out how to do it or when to delegate and how to outsource that correctly. Do you find like you're kind of going through the growing pains of figuring that out yourself right now?
I do. I definitely feel that way. There's, as you said, there's a lot of hats you have to wear as a business owner. And in my case, I'm not just talking about hard hats, although I could have benefited from one a few times in the construction. But as you said, like I have to do all the accounting before I pass it on to the accountant, so to speak. So I still have to be aware of it and do all of that. And I have to create my own website. And I'm telling you, designing a house is easier than designing a website. And the social media, that's something that I'm learning as I go, as I said, but there are so many different things you have to learn, and you have to, throw it all into the same day. And it's none of it is easy, but it's all fun.
So you and your husband both have the creative genes. Do your kids have it? Are you seeing it already in them, that they kind of have the eye and the mind?
Yes, I actually love this question because once I was so fully conscious that I was a designer, I see it in my kids so much. My two daughters, they're 3 and about to be 7, totally into fashion design. I mean, my daughter, the way she dresses and coordinates her outfits and adds her jewelry, that, I have to be honest, was not me as a child, but I love seeing it in her. And she got a makeup kit for Christmas, and, you know, she'll put on her makeup and she'll do her hair, and she likes to dress up. And then her little sister has caught on, so she likes to copy all of that. But then my 4-year-old son, he could definitely end up as an engineer one day. He tells me, I love to build houses, mommy. And he said, can you give me a miniature toy version of our house? I love it so much. And so, I mean, the things that come out of their mouths are just adorable. And then my oldest son, he's always complimenting all of the designs that he sees. He tells me, mommy, your designs are sick. Now, you know, that means super cool. But he is very science oriented right now. So I'm very curious to see where that leads. But yes, they all show. Oh, no, I have to say, my oldest son, apart from being into science, is very into Minecraft. And so it kind of blew my mind when he was showing me the houses and landscapes he was building. I don't know how he does it, but it's very impressive.
Minecraft is something my son got into too. And I tried to play it a few times, but it makes me feel like dizzy.
Same here. Like, he asked me to play because he knows that I design houses, and I'm like, babe, that's a totally different thing.
But I do love the idea of little designer doll houses, by the way.
I know, right? Isn't that cute?
Really sweet.
Do you watch TV, Nina? And like, when you're watching certain shows, you're literally, instead of actually even paying attention to the dialogue, looking at the design in the background? Does your mind kind of
100%. Like, as soon as I was designing houses, it was not the show so much I was watching. I was looking at the light fixtures and the furniture and the design of the room, and like, ooh, that's kind of cool. So I mean, I love that. It can be a little distracting, but like I told you, my mind is on design 24/7. I literally dream about it. I get less sleep because of it, but I don't mind, because I think when you're passionate about something, you know, sleep is not as much of a, you know, deprivation if you're lacking it. And anyway, having 4 kids for 9 years, I'm kind of used to being sleep deprived.
Natalie, is it the same for you when you're watching something? Do you kind of gravitate to light fixtures and colors? Does your mind kind of go there too?
Oh yeah, it's very distracting, as you said, because I'm holding on to the plot by like a thread, but I get very distracted by like, oh, get that light, you know? Some of the shows are exceptional with their set designs, and it's something I wouldn't mind doing too, you know, set designer for a day on a really cool 70s set.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Natalie was actually our first guest on Life by Design, and I asked her what her dream project was, and I'll kind of give it away. She wants to do a boutique hotel. What's your dream project, Nina? Like, what's the Mount Everest of what you want to do?
Well, that's really awesome, Natalie. If I were to do a commercial project, I'd probably want to design either a restaurant or a kid's space, like a kid's dentist office, or, you know, maybe a hospital design, because I was, you know, a preschool teacher for a number of years and I love kids. But in terms of my personal dream project, I have a whole idea for an addition on the right side of my house that would allow me to give each of my children their own rooms, to create a home office, and to have a giant basement for storage in the downstairs, because, you know, with 4 kids, there's just never enough storage. And I would say if I were to have like a dream client project, then it would be a completely custom house with an unlimited budget. And like, really, I'm joking there because that's kind of a running joke in the interior design community. But I would also like, any project, even with a restricted budget, because I find that challenges lead to supreme creativity.
I fully agree with you there. It's nice to have an unlimited budget, but that's very rare.
Very rare.
And I think it takes a lot more to like really dig deep and find something funky to do on a dime.
Agreed.
This is actually a question for both of you. How do you manage? So like when a client comes to you and they're like, we have X dollars to work with, let's say, I don't know, $50,000. How, as a designer for each one of you, do you take that bucket of money that they give you and then figure out how you're going to spend it?
Well, sometimes you have to find out, is that their real budget, or, do they have a little room to work with? Because sometimes, depending on the project, the budget can often be unrealistic. And especially if you want a quality project that's going to last for years and not fall apart within the first couple of months, then you have to have, a certain degree of quality to all of the fixtures and the design in general. But I tend to go places and pick out maybe a few different options. So one of a little higher quality, then a couple of a little lower quality, that gives them like a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of ownership over the decision and the design process, so they feel involved. And then I try to, pick things so that it does meet their budget as closely as possible. And then if it seems to be going above, then we decide, well, how can we adjust it? Should we make the shower smaller? Should we cut out this, extra feature here, and kind of, work with what we have?
I agree. And I think the functionality is huge. So depending on the space, like what is the functionality of the space? If it's the space you want to lounge in, that you're going to spend a little bit more money on a high-end sofa versus like, where is your high-low? So what can you save on? What can you splurge on? What can you do to make that room really interesting without just blowing the budget out of the water? So it's like it's a dance. Like you said,
yes,
back in the beginning, is that dance of like marrying a high-low and still bringing functionality as the top point.
I agree. And you guys already know I like to dance, so.
Well, I definitely know one thing, Nina. If design doesn't work out for you, we can sell your life story probably to Steven Spielberg and get a movie made out of it.
I love that.
You've been amazing, Nina. Thank you for joining us on Life by Design. It's just an incredible story. You've got a great personality, and it's been a blast chatting with you.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure meeting all of you and chatting with you.
It's really nice to meet you, Nina.
Thank you.
I hope so. We can do this in person someday too.
Me too. That would be amazing. And I follow you on Instagram, so I see you a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to say, with social media, if you want to copy anybody, copy Natalie. Her social media is like the brightest, most colorful, coolest Instagram ever.
Yes. Very happy and very lively, I like to tell people.
Yeah, that's why I brought my highlighter yellow dress on today. Just for you.
And that's why I wore green, because of my love of nature.
Yeah, see, it's applicable.
Yeah.
I love that.
Nina, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything. And you've been just awesome to talk to.
Thank you. You too. Bye.